So one of the things that I get asked about the most from people that are moving to Louisiana from another state is having to do with flooding and flood insurance. And that's exactly what we're talking about in this video. Let's get into it. Hey everybody, Sean Ramos here. This is Living in Louisiana, where we talk about everything that you need to know when it comes to what it's like moving to or living in Louisiana. If you've been with us before, welcome back, but if it's your first time to the channel, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell because I'm putting out brand new videos just like this every single week. And if you didn't know, I am a licensed realtor in the state of Louisiana, so that number that's popping up on your screen right now, that's the best way that you can reach out to me. And I am the guy that's going to reply to every single call, text, or email that comes through. And as much as I do love making these videos for you guys, what I really love is to help you with your real estate needs. So don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything at all that I can help you with. So flooding can be a pretty scary topic, especially if you've never experienced it before. Now, in my lifetime that I can remember, there are two really catastrophic flooding events that have happened fairly recently. And most of you guys have probably heard of them because they were pretty big national news at the time. Hurricane Katrina in 2005 was one of the deadliest and the costliest storms that have ever hit the US. Now, it went across the southern tip of Florida as a Category 1 hurricane, but when it went back out into the Gulf of Mexico, it got in those warm waters and strengthened all the way to a Category 5 storm. And once they saw it was heading towards New Orleans, the mayor at the time issued a mandatory evacuation. So most people got out of the city, but there were some that either just wouldn't or couldn't leave. And by the time Hurricane Katrina finally made landfall near the Mississippi-Louisiana line, it had weakened back to a Category 3 hurricane. Now, if you've ever experienced a hurricane or if you know much about them, you know that if it's heading directly towards you, you really want to be on the left side of the eye of the storm because the right side gets hit the worst. And that's what happened. The storm was to the east of New Orleans, so they were on the left side of it. But it wasn't the wind, you know, that caused all the damage like you see a lot of the times. It was the storm surge afterwards. So the levees and the storm walls around New Orleans just couldn't stand up to it, and eventually over 80% of the New Orleans metro area was underwater. And the twin span bridges that stretch over 5 miles and connect New Orleans to Slidell was damaged so badly that they had to be completely rebuilt. So all in all, over 1,500 people died from Hurricane Katrina, and there was over $100 billion in damage. And then there was the 2016 flood, or as they call it, the Great Flood of 2016. Now this one really hit hard where I live, and it was a rain event that wasn't even associated with a named storm, so we didn't have the warning that we typically have, because with a hurricane, we know those are coming days, if not a week ahead of time. And this storm was just nearly stagnant, and it just stayed on top of us and dumped 20 to 30 inches of rain. So of course that resulted in multiple rivers rising to levels that were record highs, and the creeks and the waterways that feed into the rivers were all full, and that water just had nowhere to go. So that resulted in lots of localized flooding, and over 90,000 homes and 20,000 businesses were damaged. And lots of those people unfortunately didn't even have flood insurance because they were in areas that were deemed low risk enough that you didn't have to have it. And they say this was a 1,000-year storm, which means there's a 1 in 1,000 chance that it could happen. But it did, and hopefully we'll never see that in our lifetime again. And like I said, this was right in my backyard, but I was one of the lucky ones that didn't flood. So as this was happening, we were following along with it on the news, and I was at work when I got the word that they were getting ready to start closing some of the roads around where I live. So I left work because my wife and, at the time, 7 and 8-year-old daughters were at home, and I wanted to make sure that if our house did flood, that they weren't there alone. So just as I pulled to the neighborhood, they were closing all the roads because the water was rising everywhere around us. But we were lucky in that the neighborhood that I lived in, you wouldn't even know anything happened. There was so much flooding around us that we couldn't leave the neighborhood, but our house was safe. Now, unfortunately, I had plenty of friends and some family that weren't so lucky. So it was a sad situation when everything kind of opened up and we were able to get out. And you know, you go to friends' houses to help them remove all the damaged stuff from their house and tear out all the sheetrock so they can rebuild. And side note, as sad as that whole thing was, it was really amazing to see everybody come together, and the people that didn't receive any of the flooding were out helping the people that did. It was a big disaster, and it brought everybody together. So let's get into the flood insurance, and we'll start with what is flood insurance. It's a type of property insurance that covers a dwelling for losses sustained by water damage due to flooding. So flooding like that is not covered by your homeowner's insurance. You have to have a separate flood policy. Now, if you have flooding in your house due to, say, a burst pipe, that's covered by your homeowner's insurance. The National Flood Insurance Program, which is managed by FEMA, offers this insurance to homeowners through private insurers. And the price is based on the NFIP designated flood zone that the property is located in and some other factors. And according to FEMA, the average Louisiana homeowner's insurance policy is about $750 a year. And that policy will cover your dwelling and outbuildings, but it doesn't cover your personal belongings. So if you want to make sure that your things are covered, you have to make sure that you have contents coverage. And let me just take a quick second to say I'm not an insurance expert here, but if you do have more questions beyond the information that I'm giving here, I work with some really smart people in insurance and I can put you in touch. And the question I get a lot is, will I need flood insurance? And the answer is, it depends on where you live, but it's never a bad idea to have it. So if you buy a house in flood zone A or flood zone AE and you have a mortgage, then you're going to be required to carry the extra flood insurance. They don't give you a choice, and they collect money every month as part of your monthly mortgage payment, and they put it in escrow, and they're going to pay the bill for you to make sure that it's taken care of. Now, flood zones A and AE mean that you have a 1% chance annually of actually flooding. So they consider you higher risk and they require the insurance. Now, if you live in flood zone X, then you're not required to have that flood insurance from your mortgage company. But again, it's not a bad idea to have it because you just never know. And flood zone X means that you're outside of the 500-year flood level, or either you're protected by a levee from the 100-year flood level. But either way, they deem you low risk enough where they don't require that you have the insurance. So it's 100% worth just getting a quote and see if it's affordable enough. Just go ahead and get it. Now, as a rule of thumb, what I typically see is that homes in older neighborhoods or homes in more rural areas are mostly the ones that require you have flood insurance. But for the most part, the newer developments are being built up high enough above the base floodplain that even if they were in flood zone A or AE before, by the time the house is built, they're up to flood zone X. Now, if you go online and you Google LSU flood map, there's a website where you can put in any address and see which flood zone classification that address is at. When they build those lots up high enough, they get what they call a LOMA, which basically states that now you're in flood zone X. So even though your mortgage company may see on a map that you do require flood insurance, once you show them this letter, you're all good. So as an example, let's talk about the previous neighborhood that I lived in. It was Audubon Lakes in Watson. And if you look on the flood maps, it looks like you're in a flood zone. But again, it was built up so high that there was a LOMA that we had to provide to the mortgage company just to show them that it really was flood zone X. But if you're just looking at the map, then you'd never know that. Now, unfortunately, if you're looking for a house in this area, there's no field in the MLS or on any of the big home search sites where you can filter out properties that require flood insurance from ones that don't. Now, some of the big home search sites like realtor.com, I've seen they have a flood risk factor that they show you, but those aren't always very accurate. So that's where I come in. The most important thing that you need to know from this video is that I'm here to help you navigate through any of this stuff so that you don't have to be an expert on any of it. I can help you find a home that's either in flood zone X so that you won't be required to have that flood insurance, or that has a reasonable enough policy that it fits into your budget and it's not that big of a deal to you. So that number that's popping up on your screen right now, that's the best way you can reach out to me and we can have that conversation. I will reply to every single call, text, or email that comes through, and I'm just here to be a resource for you guys for anything real estate related. So if you have a question, no matter how big or small, don't hesitate to reach out. I love helping you guys with this stuff, and that's the reason I make these videos. It doesn't matter to me whether you're making a move right now or if you're just thinking about moving in the future, we can have that conversation. And do me a favor, if you haven't done it yet, make sure you subscribe and click the notification bell because I'm putting out brand new videos just like this one every single week. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you on the next video.